Yes, okay, yes. We can.
All right. Have a quorum. Councilmember Kelly. Here. Councilmember Braithwaite. Here. Councilmember Nusma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes of the Administration and Public Works Committee meeting of March 14th, 2022.
Second.
I'm sorry, did you want me to take a roll?
By Councilmember Nusma. Yes, but I'll just say, all those in favor say aye.
It's hard to hear them.
Aye. Aye.
I'm sorry, but I believe because not everybody's here, we have to take a roll call vote on all votes.
Okay, then we can do that.
Councilmember Kelly. Here. Aye. Councilmember Braithwaite.
Here, yep.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye. Do we have public comment for today?
We do have two people signed up for public comment, Mr. Vasilko and Francine Allen.
Okay. We'll start with Mr. Vasilko.
You say so. I should start.
Is Mr. Vasilko on? Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm focusing my comments on mostly the bills list, although I'm curious why there's no credit card report this month. I didn't see anything about the credit card expenses in any of the attachments, so I assume that's not up for approval. My second item is the city manager's office account 61055. There are a number of temporary employees that were apparently hired for $6,366. I'm wondering if Human Resources approved those hirings. You recall that Clerk Reed at the time hired a temporary person for $2,000, but that was rejected by the council because they didn't have city Human Resources approval. And I think those should be treated equally. Recruitment account 62612 for $35,000 was that wasted city manager search. I also like somebody to explain what the other two payments are for recruitment software from Frontline Technologies for $36,000. School crossing guards account 62509. I thought the city was requiring that the school system pay for the crossing guards, and that was $55,000 just for March. Community development account 62080. Why are we refunding the cost of a building permit for $61,000 to IHO? Like somebody to explain that. The March bill for instructors at Fleetwood Jourdain, account number 62606. That's $37,000. Are these expenses totally paid back through revenue from fees paid by individuals or by groups? It would be helpful if the city could publish a revenues list as a companion document for these recreation centers that could be compared with the bills list. So you're saying whether there's a loss or not, or a profit. Public Works Agency account number 65503 for forward space invoice for $16,200.
Can I ask you to start wrapping up?
I've just got a couple more things. There's only two speakers, if you don't mind, please. Is forward space being used as a sole source? Because they also did Robert Crown. I've seen their name on a number of dealers. I just want to know if that $16,000 was a competitive number. The fleet fund, there's allowances, not invoices, but allowances of $4,000 for 4 or 5 individuals. Why are we paying allowances without invoices attached? Lastly, the insurance fund, we're paying $84,600 for a lawsuit, I guess, between Sanchez and the Village of Wheeling. I don't understand that and why we're paying, why Evanston is paying for that. And lastly, item A14, for zero emissions, don't place that on file, don't accept it and place it on file. This is something you're so far behind on. You claim to want to achieve zero emissions by 2035, that's less than 15 years. You should accept it, the report, but select a date certain to review and, examine this report in more detail. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Francine Allen.
Yes, this is Ken Schwartz. I'm representing Miss Allen, who's unavailable today, and I'm here to help answer any questions that the staff may have of her.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the consent agenda may I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull items A5 and A14 from consent.
A3, A4.
A5 and A14.
Thus far, I have A3, A4 from Councilmember Braithwaite, Councilmember Nusma, A5 and A14.
Give me one moment.
I'm sorry?
She asked
Just
for
need
a
1
moment.
minute.
Okay.
I hope you discuss items on A1.
I'd like to remove A20 if Chief. Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
And A14 we pulled?
Yes.
Okay, I'm all set, thanks.
All set?
Yes, I did pull A4.
Okay. May I have a motion for the consent agenda? Minus items A3, A4, A5, and A14.
I'll move, but you may want to just at least read the headings and the dollar amounts into the record.
Okay.
I will second the motion for the consent calendar, which includes item A1, approval of the bills list and payroll list in the amount of $2,634,975.85, and the bills list for $1
I'm
million.
sorry, Councilmember Kelly.
Can we respond to Mr. Vasilka's questions about the bills list? I just feel like
You can pull it off the consent.
Okay, then I'll just pull it off because
Okay.
it seems like we should at least respond to those questions.
Okay, then I will move the consent agenda, which now includes item A2, purchase of one vehicle for the Administrative Services Department from Curry Commercial Center and one vehicle for the Public Works Agency from Russo Power Equipment. Those totals are $48,507 from Curry and $43,791.15 from Russo Power. Next would then be item A6, I believe. Approval of a one-year contract extension to the agreement with Intera Incorporated for material testing services. This is RFP 20/10 in the not-to-exceed amount of $150,000. Item A7, approval of a one-year contract extension with Patriot Paving Maintenance for the 2022 crack sealing program. This is in the amount of $80,000. Item A8, approval of a one-year contract extension with Corrective Asphalt Materials for the Reclamite Pavement Rejuvenation Program in the amount of $30,000. A9, approval of the third year of a three-year contract with J.A. Johnson Paving Company for the 2022 street patching program in the amount of $700,000. Item A10, approval of a one-year contract with Precision Pavement Marking for the 2022 pavement marking program in the amount of $210,000. Item A11, approval of a sole source purchase with Total Parking Solutions for 28 parking pay stations. This is in the amount of $2,025,000. And item A12, single source licensing and support renewal for Microsoft Structured Query Language Server and Windows Server with software assurance from Dell Technologies in the amount of $34,201.74. Last but not least, item A13, approval of the agreement with Evanston Township High School to supply lunches for the 2022 summer food program in the, where's the amount? Projected expenses are $127,000. Projected revenue reimbursement is $150,000.
Great, thank you. The consent agenda has properly been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it. We can move back to the items that were removed from the consent agenda. Item A1, Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, could we just, I just think,
Move it first.
I'm sorry, I'd like to move item A1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Kelly.
So could we just, is it possible to run through those with a relatively quick response to, I wrote down the item numbers to at
Sure.
least
Do
respond
you
to
wanna-
those questions. It was 61055 is the first one. Let's see, bills pay list. I mean, who would answer those questions?
Can someone, I think the best way is to read it off
Okay.
and then,
All right, you may
Somebody
just
can
read off
answer.
each number?
And then give staff an opportunity to make
Okay.
it up.
So if I got them right, I think it's 61055, 62612, 62509, 62080, 62.
Would you like, or are you able to capture that?
No, I don't know what the questions were.
yeah, I was
Yeah,
saying,
yeah, so-
can we read off the questions is what I was saying.
Yeah, and maybe, do you want us to move back to this item, table this for a second, and then you can formulate or
Okay.
the questions, whatever you have?
Okay.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's go on to, can I have a motion to table that?
I mean, we could just hold it over and just keep going.
I'll follow up in a little bit with the questions.
And that's what I mean, table it for this meeting, it's not,
Okay.
That's fine. You're the chair.
I mean, I'll ask later
Yeah.
today.
may I have a motion to table it?
I'll move to table
Okay,
until
is there
later
a
this,
second?
this meeting.
Okay,
Second.
good enough.
Councilmember Bruns? All right, all those in favor say aye. Okay, great. Okay, may I have a motion for item A3?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to move item A3, which is the approval of change order number 2 with the contract of Garland DBS for the fire station emergency roof repairs. Who's covering that? Who has that? Do you mind I was curious to just an updates and timeline when it will be finished and just an understanding what the purpose of the delay?
Certainly. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer. So Garland had ordered the windows. They were supposed to be in. They didn't come in. The new delivery date is they're actually scheduled to be installed over the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so that was,
And then that will be the final thing for that contract.
and then it'll be all stitched up.
It'll all be stitched up.
Okay, thank you very much for the update.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No, I'm good.
No, great. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. May I have a motion for item A4?
That's also me. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to move the approval contract with Salas O'Brien for the Noise Cultural Arts Center HVAC feasibility study. It's for action.
Is there a second?
Is this one yours too?
There is a second.
Second by Councilmember Nusma.
So two things, and maybe when I read this, I was speed reading, so I was trying to understand, Laura, it was 100 or $125, I can't remember, for a feasibility study, or was that to actually do the repair? I thought it was a study to tell us how much it's going to cost. That's me summarizing, so that's why I want clarification.
Yes, so it is a study to determine what needs to be done to complete repairs at the Noise Cultural Arts Center. The issue being that the HVAC system, which is primarily heating, there's no centralized air conditioning, is failing, and there's no way to get replacement parts. It's like a radiant system with cabinets.
Fair enough.
But the cabinets are pneumatically operated, and the whole building would need to essentially be rewired to modernize it. So the feasibility studies to hire a consultant to tell us the best way to
So
upgrade the system.
I guess the reason that I'm scratching my head on this is for two reasons. Number one, it's like we're asking for somebody to tell us how much it would cost versus just asking for a proposal and have someone do that for free who would normally do the repairs. So it seems like a two-step that we could eliminate one, but I'm not that smart. And then the second thing is we're paying for it out of bonds, which also didn't make much sense to me for something that's, I just call it a contract bid, right? So help me to understand the two mechanisms, the why, the need to pay for what I would call it a proposal, because eventually somebody's going to have to fix it or replace it if we're spending the money. And then two, why are we using bonds?
The second question's easier to answer. This study, when it turns into a design project, turns into a construction project, is capitalized altogether with the construction. And so it's pretty standard that we use bonds to pay for those types of things. In terms of the why are we doing a study first, the answer is that it is not very straightforward. The building is really large. It's pretty complex. And we would need a consultant to give us options. There's different ways to improve the HVAC. For example, we could continue with a radiant steam heated system, not very CARP compliant. We could look at CARP and come up with an all electrification sort of system. That comes with a different set of costs. There are likely to be other issues that are associated with the contract as we move forward. So they're going to do a study, and then there's a big piece of that money. We don't actually have any drawings for this building, and so part of the scope of the project is to develop some working drawings for the building so that we could then proceed with the design.
Councilmember Braithwaite, are you?
And I apologize for not reaching out to you early on this. I'm still sort of scratching my head because I at some point we had talked about the possibility of, let me be clear, we didn't, it was talked about, so we didn't make any actions in case somebody calls us up after this. The possibility of even selling noise has been something that has been toyed around with for quite some time. And I know that there's no timeline for that. It's not something that we're taking action. It just seems like a lot of money just given all of those scenarios that I just shared.
Absolutely. It's entirely possible that the city council could choose to sell noise, but that isn't in my purview to make that decision. And meanwhile, the HVAC system has gotten to the point where some decisions are really going to need to be made. So it is up to the city council if they choose to proceed with this study or not. However, if there are failures, we will struggle to get any repairs made to keep the building.
So right now, do
heated.
we currently have AC in that building? I don't think
No.
so. Yes.
We have window air conditioning units
Right.
in some of the windows. But the issue we're running into with the heating system has to do with the distribution of the heat. The radiant system and the cabinets that are in each room are on the verge of failing, and you cannot get replacement parts. So that is the concern. We've planned for several years to do a study, but we were sort of waiting to see what would happen with the disposition of noise. But it seems like the city owns it and we need to maintain it. But it is entirely up to the city council whether to proceed or not.
Fair enough. So I feel like I want to push back on this, and, obviously there's a vote from the committee that rather than spend $100K that we'd bond out, we're past the winter months of really cold weather, and you probably have about 2 or 3 months before it gets hot for a building that doesn't have AC right now. I will not pretend to know all the mechanics of a large building. I just know if it was my AC and I had to pay someone to tell me what's wrong with it, I'd probably call someone and just tell me how much, what the cost is going to be to fix it. So I'd be curious to know if we were to put this on hold for a second, contact a couple of mechanical engineers that do this for a living who you've used in the past and just ask them what it would cost to fix the damn thing or to replace the whole thing. And I realize there's some nuances that you just mentioned. I just see it as an opportunity to save $100,000, but again, I'll stop talking and defer to the committee. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, yes. I feel similarly. It just seems $185,000 for a feasibility study. I know we also have engineers. I'm just trying to understand that cost for the study. I mean, I'm wondering if, what's our total cost a year right currently with what we do have? I mean, what does it cost to run? I know we don't have air, but we don't have, I'm just trying to understand the percent, like what we're planning on paying $185,000 for in light of total costs currently. And
I do not have access to the information for what we're spending on the
Heating.
natural gas to pay for running the heating system. I can only tell you that we're in a situation where the heating system hasn't been adjusted for 40, 45 years, so we're going to need to spend some money to do it, and our staff has not felt comfortable making a recommendation as to how to improve it with the various goals they've been given by the city council.
And this was the low, where did this come in the bids?
They're the lowest out of the two.
Yeah, we received 2 proposals, and they were the lowest.
Oh, Councilmember, are you done?
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Councilmember Nusma?
Thank you, Chair Burns. I will support this study under the assumption that one of the options that the consultant would be investigating would be an all-electric option. And this is something that we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes with item A14, our municipal operations zero emission strategy. And so this type of conversation is exactly in line with our stated objectives for zero carbon under our CARP plan. It's going to cost some money to be able to get there. And knowing what those options are is worth paying some money for. So I will support this.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Again, I'm outside of my wheelhouse, so I would just ask if this is your thing. So if there were 2 companies telling us what's wrong, what's the harm with looking at 2 companies that can tell us what's right and have them come up with their proposal?
I think I'll defer to the city engineer when she says that in this case, we're probably going to have to pay somebody to give us some advice. I would have to imagine if there were a way to get free advice, we already would have pursued that option.
Yes, we would have. It's just the size and the complexity of the systems. So when we talk about in a residential building or even in a small commercial building, there will be a circuit breaker box. The service comes in, there's a circuit breaker box, there's a furnace. So for example, at Ecology Center, we have 2 forced air units that provide air conditioning. They're slightly larger than residential size. It's a really simple system. But when we get into a situation at noise, you have a switchgear that fills a room and a boiler system that's really ancient. We don't know the condition of the distribution system of pipes for the radiant heat. We know that the cabinets don't have the kind of parts that we can get readily in the individual rooms. They're pneumatically operated currently. That's not a modern standard of technology for heating cabinets. Modern standard would be electrically operated, but the building doesn't have the electrical distribution system inside to support that. So it's not clear if we need to replace the pneumatically operated system, if we can get competitive products or not. So there's just like a lot of pieces because of the size of the building and the age of the system.
If it were just an air conditioner at our house, yeah, you call a couple companies, get a couple quotes and go with, whoever you want to choose at that point. For something like this, it's so old, so complex that if we were to go out to bid as is, anybody who would bid on it would need to do all this work to be able to find out what the actual price would be.
I agree.
Right, and they're not going to do that for free.
That's
They're
the
going to
point.
build that into the cost of their bid. And either that or dramatically overbid so that they have enough of a cushion to be able to accommodate any kind of contingencies. And then still we'd be faced with any number of unknown change orders based on what they would find when they open up the walls. So taking a little bit of time up front, spending some money up front to figure out what the actual problem is, define the problem, so then that technological solutions to that problem can be properly identified, properly engineered, properly sized, that will save us money later on in the contractor phase. We're going to pay for it one way or the other. Paying a little bit now makes sense to me, rather than paying a lot later and not knowing what the actual price tag might be at the end.
If I can go to Deputy Manager Stonebeck.
And I think that if you just were to go out and get quotes from different mechanical contractors, that we're not informing them as to what it is that we want complete. We just want an operational system, and how do we verify that? How do we know that the work that they perform will meet the requirements of the building? So they're saying, I'm going to do this in here, and then if they fail, there's no spec that they had to meet. There's, we're taking, it's actually like a design build. You tell us what we need, we approve the cost, you go build it, and then we hope that it works properly. And we can do that. That's a design build type of system. But do you want it to be an electrical system? Do you want it to be a steam heat system or radiant heat?
Again, I'm following the logic, but if this is my house and I have an option between, again, much smaller scale, something that I can put my head around, and I'm like, do I go solar or don't I go solar? Do I go with forced gas heat or electrical heat? I would like to think that between 2 or 3 different proposals, I at least have an idea of what it's going to cost, and I also have an idea what the cost-saving benefits are. So if this is not the right process in a municipal setting, I can concede to that, but I would say anybody who does the work, Director Stonebeck, is going to have to guarantee some things through warranties that if it fails, and I don't think, whether or not this was designed to our specs, I think that's something that a really good AC or HVAC company would do. I'd like to think there are companies out there that would eventually do the work, should be able to come in and assess it to a certain degree, and I also trust our staff has the expertise to evaluate which is the right path. So it can move forward. I just want my complaints to go on down the record, and I hate to hold up time on things if there's enough support to move it along.
All right. I'm going to call a roll call on this. Councilmember Burns.
And still trying to wrap my head around this. Is part of the reason I volunteered to sit on the Budget and Finance Committee. But is this dollar amount, bond amount, something that we already approved? This isn't.
Yes, the part of the money is in bonds that were previously sold because this project has been pushed off for staffing reasons. And there are some additional money that was approved as part of the adopted budget that is bonds to be sold in this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you flipping on your light or not? Okay. Councilmember Kelly.
So just two bids here. I'm just wondering, could we, why is that, was it out for a while? I don't know. I'm sorry, the details on this, but it seems like, I mean, I'd like to see this. It seems very high to me. Again, since it's not a bid, it's not a, as Mr. Stonebeck said, I feel like if we had one company doing this, we would come in a lot less. It just seems like for a study, 185,000 for one building just feels like, could we get more bids?
We could issue another request for proposal, but we have no control over who chooses to submit proposals or not. We are seeing that a lot of companies are very busy right now and are choosing not to submit as many proposals to our RFPs.
Okay.
I'll just say, I do think this is a lot of money to pay for a study. I'm going to support it, but in the future, I'm going to, and I kind of implore us all to work to bring ourselves up to speed, maybe on the need for some of these contracts and other methods that we can use to keep some of the contract prices down, particularly for something like this. Okay, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Braithwaite. No. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
The ayes have it. This moves on to council. I have a motion for item A5.
Mr. Chair, I'll move item A5, approval of contract award with LS Contracting Group for parking garage structure repairs in the amount of $1,002,947.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded.
Yeah, I just
Oh, okay.
had
Take your time.
one comment on that. I'm going to support this. Well, there was an option in here to pay an additional $25,000 or so for fireproofing, which would require some negotiation with the condo association that shares this parking lot. And I just wanted to give staff the direction, if it makes sense to everyone on the committee, to go ahead and initiate those conversations. Is that all you need?
Yeah, that's fine.
Everyone else cool with that? Awesome. No, there was there in addition to the $1,290,000, whatever it was, $1,002,947, we can also pay an additional $25,600 to improve or to repair the fireproofing to the structure. That cost may be borne or may be shared by the condo association, correct?
Yes, so this involves structural repairs at 4 city-owned parking garages, including the lesser well-known Chicago Avenue parking garage that's located south of Dempster Street on Chicago Avenue. And the city owns the first floor, and the second floor and above are owned by a private condominium association. There are some fireproofing issues on their levels, which we got a price for as we bid the documents, what it would cost for them to fix that. And we can open negotiations with the condo association and see if they're willing to complete the repairs, pay for it, and we can do it under our contract or they can do it under theirs. It is not technically the responsibility of the city of Evanston to do those
That clarifies
repairs.
that. So direction to staff is at least pursue that conversation with the condo
Yes.
association.
We will.
And-
So we don't need to award the cost for that now. If we come to an agreement, we can add it as a change order later.
Great.
Anything further on item A5? Seeing nothing further, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Now we are on to item A14. I have a motion for item
Thank you,
A14.
Mr. Chair. We'll be My pleasure to move item A14 to accept and place on file after some discussion, Evanston's Municipal Operations Zero Emission Strategy.
Is there a second? Oh, yes.
Kara, do you want to give us a quick overview of what we're dealing with here? If that's okay with the chair?
Sure. You may use your time.
Good afternoon. I'm Kara Pratt, the Sustainability and Resilience Coordinator for the city. And this report was completed in August of 2021, and I began employment in October of 2021. So I just hope to share that information as an explanation for why I might not be able to answer all the questions associated with this report. But this was a report commissioned by the city that cost just over $60,000, and it was to research the opportunities and pathways for zero emissions for municipal operations by 2035. So broadly, it provides 3 different pathways: the most ambitious and most expensive, the middle ground, and then the least ambitious and least expensive, all of them getting to zero emissions by 2035. The biggest difference is in right-sizing city property, whether we would maintain the building footprint that we have, whether we would push for full electrification of buildings, and the degree to which we would rely on renewable energy credits, which is the purchase of credits associated with solar and wind, or if we would rely on additionality, which would be deploying our own renewable energy options within city limits. And so there are 2 memos attached with the communication, one from the Environment Board, one from the Utilities Commission, that explain those 2 boards and committees' perspective on this report. And both of those groups have opted for the most ambitious, transformative change. And then this was presented to this group in order to get further feedback and have further discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kara. I will fully support the transformative change option in doing that as quickly as we can within our budgetary constraints. I understand that making this commitment now leaves a lot of work to be done in ensuing years as we figure out how much it's going to cost to get there and figure out where all this money is going to come from. So can we talk about that second point a little bit? Where are we going to find the money to do all this work?
Sure. So within the zero emission strategy, there are a number of different resources that are identified. And because the different options are so broad, there are 9 different strategies, from streetlights to fleet electrification, renewable energy. There would be an assortment of different funding mechanisms. So for example, for solar, a power purchase agreement would probably be the most ideal approach to take, because there would be zero capital expenditure by the city, and we would have cost savings over time versus spending millions of dollars upfront to own our own solar installation. So there are some innovative practices that we can follow depending on which approach that we would take. Then there's also really promising funding coming from IJA, from the federal government, that would cover different projects through different grant resources depending on the project.
Great. So there's a price tag associated with capital expenses and upfront expenses to set this plan in motion. But reading the report here, there will be ongoing operational savings, so that in the long run, this investment will pay for itself in terms of operational savings. Case in point, electric vehicles. As we electrify our fleet, we won't pay for gasoline, we won't pay for diesel, we will pay significantly less for maintenance. And so all that, operational savings will more than pay us back for whatever the additional upfront cost is. Speaking in general terms, would you concur?
I think depending on the project, that's true.
Yeah.
That's certainly true for solar. That's generally been seen to be true for purchasing electric vehicles. There are some other projects where the return on investment might be a little bit more hard to calculate. And staff did have a consensus for this report that some of the financial projections were not exact, and that's because it's just not an exact science to know exactly what the return on investment for this array of different projects would be. But certainly it would be our ambition to pursue projects that have a strong ROI and reduce our carbon footprint.
And just to define scope of work, this particular study addressed only the city of Evanston operations, which is just a fraction of the community of Evanston.
Correct. It's about 1%. The municipal operations, so that's city buildings and city fleet, are about 1% of the entire carbon footprint within Evanston's land area.
So kind of a drop in the bucket if we're talking about the community of Evanston. But I have to think there is significant benefit in the city taking a leadership role and moving forward with plans to get to zero carbon, because we are all going to have to hop on that bandwagon at some point. Residential, commercial, industrial entities within the city are heading in this direction. And we need to get moving, and I love the idea of the city taking a leadership role.
One way to think about it is we have almost complete control over this 1% versus the 99% of emissions within the city as a whole. We have some degree of responsibility for helping our business partners, our school districts reduce their carbon footprint, but we don't have 100% control over those.
Right. And there's a lot more we're going to have to do outside of the scope of municipal operations, outside of the scope of this study, to get to our zero carbon, zero waste by 2050 goals. But this, is a big step in the right direction, or a small step that will lead to bigger steps in the right direction. So thanks for picking up the ball and bringing it to us.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. It is good to have the city lead on this. I am concerned about the $70 million for a 1%. Is that what we're saying? $70 million for a 1% reduction based on this plan? Because there are no correlating numbers here in terms of, a $70 million price tag obviously is very high, but I don't really see the correlating numbers in terms of reduction in greenhouse emissions from this. And it looks like maybe it's 1%. And so if you extrapolate, that's not a very promising.
It's 100% of the city's emissions, right, which is 1% of the community's emissions.
Right, and I mean, certainly there can be codes and others that that regulate large landmass buildings and such. It doesn't have to be, we can develop. I mean, I'm just wondering, this seems like an awful lot of money to impact 1% emissions, where we could in fact move forward on other plans that do impact beyond just the municipality through coding, there's a lot of different means. So I'm a little concerned about this price tag with such a tiny impact.
Yeah, I mean, I will point out that this will pay back. There is, whatever the price tag is, and whether it's 70 or 65 or 80, when all is said and done, at this point, it's just a forward-looking projection, and nobody has that good of a crystal ball. But there will be savings. There will be energy savings in the long run, which I fully expect will pay this back eventually. And what we're voting on tonight is not approving an expense of whatever $70 million it is, but just approving conceptually that that is the target we are aiming for, and that is the direction we're heading. And we will have ample opportunity to approve any number of expenses over the next, 4 years, over the next 8 years, over the next 12 years that are going to be required to get us there.
I guess it's listed as a pilot project, $70 million pilot project. That's how it's described. I wouldn't think you would venture on a $70 million pilot project.
I wouldn't characterize this as a pilot project. This was a study of municipal operations that gives us, I don't want to say an educated guess, because it's more than just a guess, but an analytical perspective on what it's going to take the city of Evanston, the civic center, the police stations, the fire stations, et cetera, city buildings, city fleet, to get to zero carbon by 2050. That was the commitment we made when the city council approved the CARP plan. And this is the first step in the roadmap to get us there.
Okay. Thank you. I will say, is there any further discussion on this item from the committee? Thank you, Kara, for this. I also support this plan. I do see the value in the city taking leadership here. I do understand Councilmember Kelly's point that it'll only achieve a 1% overall, but it certainly is, as Councilmember Newsman noted, 100% of the city's carbon emissions, and it's great for us to be the leader here in an effort like this. So I will support it when it comes time to actually take action on this, as well as, I'm fully supportive of the full plan. I think, Councilmember Kelly,
I was just a little bit unclear about so who actually crafted this report? There's no date on it or anything. I'm just trying to understand who crafted it and.
This was an effort crafted by consultants in collaboration with city staff. So it's Elevate Energy and the Center for Neighborhood Technology primarily as the consultant partners.
Thank you.
thank you. All those in favor of accepting and placing this item on file, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. All right, Councilmember Kelly, you ready for us to go back to item A1?
Sure. Sorry, let's see. A1 was related to the
The Evanston payroll and bills
the
list.
payroll, right. And the first one that he mentioned, item 61055, was related to temporary employees.
Can I have a motion first? Can you
I'm sorry.
please remove it?
A motion to respond to questions by,
Yeah, if we, a motion to remove it from the table?
okay, motion to remove from the table.
Item A1. Seconded. Okay, thank you. Now your questions.
Okay, the first item that he asked about, can he just jump on maybe? And just, but I think
If
the
I can
first
have
one was
you ask the
related
questions.
to temporary employees in the city manager's office versus, he pointed out, yeah, thank you, Kelly. It was item 61055.
Good evening, Chair Reed, members of the APW Committee, Kelly Gandersky, Interim City Manager. What specifically is the question? Is it pertaining to the temporary staff we have in the CMO's office?
Yes, I believe that's the question about whether that was approved of by the HR office as he compared it, I guess, to when
Well-
clerk. Go ahead.
Yeah, if we can just, the quiz question was it approved by the HR office?
No.
Okay, so I think you'd like an explanation. Go ahead.
It was not approved by the HR office.
Okay, so I guess there was some confusion why there was a lot, I think earlier this year, about approving a payment for a temporary employee because it hadn't been approved by the HR office, so it wasn't paid.
I'm not really sure what the question is.
I believe the question is did the HR department approve the hiring of the temporary employees? Not so much the pay of them, but the hiring of them.
It depends upon whether they're housed in HR or not. So to the extent that we had contract employees in HR, the HR manager is authorized to make those contracts. If they're housed in CMO, then I would approve the contracts. If they're housed in community development, the community development director would approve the contract.
So I asked the question if it helps to clarify it.
I'm sorry, did we take comments from, I thought I'm answering the council's questions.
Yeah. Chair, Councilmember Burns?
And I might be getting this wrong, but also what I heard was a kind of look back at a time when Councilmember Reed was the clerk, and at that time there was disagreement on whether or not the clerk at the time had the position itself had the authority to hire and fire, and I think we've clarified that now. The new council has clarified that, and the new I don't think this position we're talking about now was a clerk's office position, but just to give you an idea of what the disagreement was then, but now since then we've clarified it. That doesn't really apply to the city manager's office, but I just wanted to.
Well, if I can now clarify, the similarity is the clerk's office. When I was clerk, I hired a contractor during a time And it was stated that the reason we did not, that this body did not approve of the payment for that contractor, which was within the clerk's office's budget, it was about $2,000 some odd dollars, was because the HR department said that the clerk could not hire that contractor. And so I think the question here is, if every other department head seems to be able to engage with a contractor without having the HR department approve of it, why couldn't the clerk's office engage with the contractor, particularly for such a low dollar amount that was within the clerk's office's budget? And so while we have answered the hiring and firing, I think what's different here is just the specifically that it was a contractor. And I think that you were well within your right to hire.
Yeah, to be clear, just if a director hires a contract employee, that's under my direction or with my permission. That's not, they don't go rogue in doing that. We only do that under circumstances where we actually don't have anybody to fill the budgeted position because we can't hire anybody, or we are just in dire need of some temporary assistance. I seem to recall the situation you're talking about. I think that situation was rectified with the new amendments to the code. And the clerk has a budget now to hire 2 deputy clerks, so.
I guess what wasn't rectified was the person getting paid, the money that was within the budget.
That was a council's decision, so there's nothing I can really say about that.
Which, I just want for the folks that are up here to be edified in that a director would have the right to contract with an employee. Of course, a director being under the management of the city manager would have that in some way approved. It wouldn't be rogue, but they would know in some way that they could do that. The clerk's office is not listed as one of the departments that is managed by the city manager, so the logic would extend that the city clerk could engage with a contractor, and it was within the clerk's office's budget at the time. Young college student still has not been paid. But that is a separate item. Are there any further questions?
Thank you.
And the next item was 62612, which had to do with $36,000 for recruitment software from Frontline Technologies related to the city manager search. And I think Mr. Vasilka wanted to know why we were spending that in addition to hiring search firms, if I got that straight.
Who can take that question?
And Chair, excuse me, if we're going to go through the whole list, can we allow Mike to just clearly state the question so we can just get through this quickly?
That would be
Well,
great.
I'm going to ask Councilmember Kelly if you have the questions and you want to go
Or
through.
Mr. Vasilka, if you could send them to Councilmember Kelly and then she can read them. I don't know if you.
Yeah, so no, but that's the question. So about the $36,000 for recruitment. And I'd also like to suggest maybe going forward, I think, when a resident does all this work and is studying our bills, I think that's great. It helps with checks and balances. But maybe we could do some sort of a system for city council where they're submitted and then the responses are read off at city council or something like, I'm just thinking.
I'll just say as a committee member, any committee member can work with a resident. So Mr. Vasilka, if you want to reach out to Councilmember Kelly, myself, or whoever, and send us your questions ahead of time, and we have the right to either ask the questions or not ask the questions. That's our representative responsibility to respond to them or not.
Can we answer that question about the $36,000 for the technology for the search? I think that would be.
Luke Stowe? New title, so I'm sorry.
I'm going to get it wrong. Interim Deputy City Manager Luke Stowe, Chair Reed, members of the council. There are 2 items. For Frontline Education is the parent company. There are 2 products. One, I think, is about $13,000 or $14,000. That is our annual renewal for the recruitment software AppleTrack. So when you apply for a job at the City of Evanston, the software that manages the incoming applications and that whole process is about $14,000 a year, which is actually really reasonable. And then the second product is $22,000 a year for a company called Forecast 5. A couple of years ago, our budget coordinator wanted to bring on software to help us do better long-term financial forecasting. And we researched a whole bunch of different products and found that Forecast 5 was the best one for us. So that product is $22,000 annually. It's called Forecast 5, and it was acquired by Frontline about a year ago. So those two items, they're together, but they're really not. It just happens to be the same parent company, but they're two different products.
Great, so unrelated to the city manager search.
That's correct.
Great,
Yes.
thank you so much. Yeah, I think that. Oops, sorry, that maybe going forward, when we have a list of questions like that from bills, if it were submitted ahead of time and then it's just a way to have this expedited.
That's what I'd recommend. I don't want to waste your time.
To the chair of, I would say to the chair of like APW to then send that out to have those responded to.
Sure. While I'm chair, Mr. Vasilko, you can feel free to send a list of questions. I can't say that I will ask every single question here from the floor, but we'll submit it to staff and we'll get answered that we can. And any member of the council or this body is certainly able to ask any question that they see fit. Okay. May I have a motion on the bills list? I'm sorry, it's been moved and seconded, seeing no further questions. May I have a roll call?
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye. All right, with the item A1 passing, we are now on to the items for consideration. We have a motion for item A15.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Braithwaite, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Nusma. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none? Is there a person to? No. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The item passes. May I have a motion on item A16?
Mr. Chair, I move item A16, Resolution 23-R-22 for action.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Braithwaite. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The item passes. That moves us on to item A17, Resolution 24R22, appointing Megan Flora, Human Resources Division Manager, as the City of Evanston's authorized agent for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, item passes. Item A18, Ordinance 22022 to approve the construction of a local improvement known as Evanston Special Assessment Number 1527. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Nusma and Councilmember Braithwaite. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item A19, Ordinance 27022 to approve the construction of a local improvement known as Evanston Special Assessment Number 1528. May I have a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Braithwaite. All those in favor? All those
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Ordinance 24022, amending Title II, Chapter 2 of the City Code to reflect changes in the Public Safety Commission rules. May I have a motion?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I do have a question about this, but I do not see the chief, and I presume
I
he'll be
believe the
here.
chief was going to be on Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, but I presume he'll be here during council, and Ms. Ozrigbo. Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Councilmember Reed, Chair of the committee. Deputy City Attorney Michelle Ozuribo, I just wanted to bring to the committee's attention that we did let the chair know that there were just a couple amendments to this one, so we did want to make sure that it's moved as amended, and I can draw the attention to the amendments. We just wanted to alert you right before the meeting.
Yes.
Just a couple of typos on there.
And I have those amendments. It says there are 2 typographical errors. So there needs to be a motion to amend the ordinance to read the Evanston Public Safety Civil Service Commission rules attached to Ordinance 51-021 as Exhibit A are hereby redacted in full and replaced by the Public Safety Civil Service Commission rules which are attached to Ordinance 24-022 as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein as fully restated. So, can someone move that? So moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, is this, I'm looking at page 322 of 347. This is just correcting a typo on the ordinance 24-022?
Correct.
That's
Is what-
correct.
And I didn't catch everything you said, but I'll take your word for it that it's
Taken.
what we want. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make that motion.
Is there a motion by Councilmember Nusma, second, and I'll send it, do you have, yeah, you do have it, Dave. Seconded by Councilmember Burns. All right, there are 2 others, that we have to vote on. I will forward this to the committee members, this email. Yeah, we do have to vote, oh, I'm sorry, yes. Do we, may I have, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendment that was just proposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? The ayes have it. That amendment has passed. All right, so I'm going to forward this to the committee. Ms. O's, okay. All right. The amendments as proposed have been sent to the members of the committee. And so I think it is in order for someone to just move the amendments. We don't have to read them in. I think we can just, they seem to be changes that are typographical, so we can just move. If I can have a motion to move the items suggested by our corporation counsel that have been submitted to the committee and can become a part of the record.
Just want to give them a glance. I'll make that motion.
And may I have a second? Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Burns. What we're voting on is to incorporate the changes suggested by our corporation counsel, Nicholas Cummings. All the committee members have those changes in their email. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, and Chief Eddington, are you on the call?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am.
Thank you, Chief Eddington. So I have, can you explain the rule change that is taking place here? And the
Certainly,
goal of it?
Mr.
Thank
Chair. Certainly. I'm also joined this evening by Deputy Chief Wright to add any further explanation if it would be needed. But essentially, we are shortening the amount of time for a lateral officer candidate to be considered. Instead of a 2-year time frame, we've narrowed it down to their probationary period, so they have to successfully complete the probationary period with their current employer. That's usually between 1 year and 18 months. We have found that there are several academy classmates of our current officers who are interested but have less than that 2 years of service, and we're eager to solicit their applications to the force. I would also like to point out that this is in the context of we're 24 sworn officers short, and that's not counting the 2 resignations and 1 retirement memo I received last week.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? I'm happy to. Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Chair Reed. I did talk with Chief Eddington earlier today about my concern that we not accept, that we're not hiring the leftovers from other municipalities. And Chief, you, I think, satisfactorily addressed my concerns. But if you'd like to summarize the steps you're taking to make sure that we are only hiring qualified candidates that would be good fits for the city of Evanston.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for that question. The candidates will be vetted. They will undergo an interview by members of our command staff. Those interview panels are led by Deputy Chief Wright, who's with us this evening. We make a determination if there's a good fit there, and then they're subject to a background check, which includes a waiver that they have to sign so we can see their current personnel file with their current employer. They're also subject to a psychological exam and a polygraph exam and a drug screen. So we're doing all the things we would do for a candidate that is not in service. The advantage to the in-service person is they have a shorter FTO period, and we don't have to send them to the basic training, so that saves the city considerable amount of dollars salary-wise. Also, we're several months away from establishing a regular police test, and this is the only way we're going to be able to obtain any manpower for the warmer summer months. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, I still do have one question. So obviously the problem that we are trying to solve here is that we have a force shortage. Trying to think of another word than manpower, but staffing shortage. So what other steps are we taking? What are we doing? I suppose this is an issue across departments, across the nation at this time, given a whole host of factors, let's say. And, well, one, do you agree with that statement? Is this something that is a problem across the nation in departments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree. It's a national problem.
Okay. And then, so what are we doing other than, lowering our recruitment standards, which I think is a fine policy. I see really no issue with this necessarily, but what else are we doing to attract more folks to our force? Do you think there's a pay gap, or what else do you think we need to be doing to fill the ranks?
Well, first of all, I think that we're making a concerted effort in this area. Our recruiting team has just posted on our social media site a video that was directed at both in-state and out-of-state in-service candidates to recruit them to the Evanston Police Department. So we're working very hard at this solution. I think one of the things that we're going to have to come to grips with is understanding the ramifications of the Title II pension system that your new hires are under that makes their pensions very portable. That wasn't the case beforehand. So we're going to have to at least consider that during our next labor negotiations to see if we're able to be competitive salary and benefit wise with the departments that are pirating our personnel.
Thank you. And then finally, do you happen to know when our next round of labor negotiations is set to occur?
I believe we're at the end of this calendar year, sir.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions from members of the committee, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. Items for discussion. I'd like to, can someone move item APW 1? Continue discussion on resuming water shutoffs as a result of non-payment.
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Mr. King, there were, hello, good day, sir.
Good evening.
There are there are a number of things that the committee asked for in a memo, and so I know that you all did some research on some of the things that I asked, particularly about Aline, but I'll let you start where you want to start, and then I have a few questions.
Sure. Chair Reed, members of the committee, Darrell King, Water Production Bureau Chief. And so a couple of weeks ago at the March 14th meeting, additional information was requested in terms of other programs that were out there that other cities were undertaking, as well as information on liens, as well as information on our last shutoff event that occurred in October of 2019. So we spoke about the affordability program that the City of Chicago is doing, 50% off for income eligible customers for their water, sewer, and water sewer tax, 50% off. You pay that for 12 months. You do it successfully, arrearages are forgiven, and Chicago is currently not doing shutoffs. Detroit, they have a customer residential assistance program for income eligible customers, 200% of federal poverty level income. And so those customers are eligible for $25 monthly discounts on their water bills, $300 total over 12 months, freeze on past due amounts for 12 months upon successful completion of the payment plan, and apply up to $350 credit toward past due amount for the first month, after enrollment, and additional $350 after the 12 months. So those are a few things that they're doing, and they're not shutting water off, as well as the City of Chicago. Philadelphia, they have a program, 150%.
If I can interject, and I'm sorry, just in the name of time to try to start council somewhere near 6 o'clock. What I'm, and I don't know if other committee members feel the same, I'm not necessarily looking to, at this moment, start a new program. I'm really just focused on the water shutoffs. And so I have been able to read the memo earlier today, and a lot of those programs seem great, and thank you for that information. That would be really helpful as we move forward. There's some really good models here, but all of the cities that you provided, they don't shut off water, correct?
Not all of them.
It seems Chicago.
I want to say Chicago does, Philadelphia, they're not shutting off right now. San Antonio does.
Does not shut off water.
San Antonio does shut off water.
Okay.
Philadelphia is not doing it. Detroit is not doing it. Seattle is performing shutoffs.
Okay. But it's a number of the cities here do not perform shutoffs. What I would really like to see is, not less about the programs that they provide, because that's not necessarily what we're talking about here, because we do have some things in place, such as the LEWAP and all of that stuff. But I'm interested in what the financial impact was in those cities when they, were performing water shutoffs, and when they stopped performing water shutoffs. What was the payment rate? How are they getting folks to keep up with their bills, and what was the impact on the city's finances once they switched policy? So that's more so pertaining to this particular discussion.
I'm sorry, can you clarify that question? Because I'm thinking just a quick 30 seconds, is if there was a letter that went out of what our staff reported, that we had a large number of the customers comply. So I'm not sure what the comparison with other communities, how that translates to what we're doing. So maybe I'm missing something. So that's a clarification that I was trying to understand.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The question is, in a community, in communities where they do not shut off water, because I made a referral to end residential water shutoffs, and so that's part of this discussion here. In cities where they have opted to end their practice of shutting off water, what has been the impact on folks complying with payment, and then ultimately to the city's finances, so we could use that to extrapolate out what might be the impact here if we were to end water shutoffs.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
thank you.
So that is what I'm asking for, as well as I see here that we walked through the lien process, and I don't know if this was done by your office or the law department that walked through this, but it says that it would take 4 hours of staff time. Ms. Ozrigbo, were you a part of this memo, or?
Good evening again, members of the committee and Chairman Reed. I was not personally a part of the memo. However, I've reviewed it, and it's a memo from the law department regarding the water shutoff.
Is whoever worked on it, are they available, or are they here?
I can have Corporation Counsel speak to any details, or if you have questions for me, that's fine too. Were there any particular questions about the memo?
I'm looking at one, for example, we have currently, first I guess I'll verify this with Mr. King. There are currently 254 residences that are on our non-payment list on the shutoff list. Is that correct?
That's correct. Residential.
Residential.
And that number changes.
Yeah, sure, but roughly,
Yes.
somewhere around
Yes.
250 residential shutoffs right now.
Correct.
And we said that usually when we send out a letter that says, hey, we're going to shut off your water, we get about 80% compliance. Is that about right?
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So of the 254, if we sent a letter, I mean, we don't know what would happen if we sent a letter that said, hey, we're going to place a lien against your property, as opposed to we're going to shut off your water. But presumably a good number of those folks would pay. It wouldn't be 254. It would, it'd be about 20% of that, let's say, 20 or even 30% if there's slightly lower compliance. So we're not necessarily looking at, over 1,000 hours in time. And now I'm switching back to the law department because these weren't your numbers necessarily. But so, Michelle, when I look at this, the calculation that it would be 1,000 some odd hours of staff time in the law department wouldn't be valid, just given that we see compliance with the first letters that are sent out. The filing fees, as the memo says, yes, we'd pay those up front potentially, but it would be much less than the $10,000 listed, and that could also be recouped by the lien process, as it says in the memo. I'm curious. It seems, what would cause each individual lien to take 4 hours of staff time? It seems to me that it's kind of once you've created the template for one water lien, it seems like you just plug in the address, you plug in the dollar amount that they have not paid, and you kind of ship it out in what seems like could be a fairly efficient manner. Can you maybe describe some of the?
So, good evening again. I'll speak a little bit to the lien process. So it wouldn't necessarily just be plugging in the numbers. What would happen is that for each property that's unpaid, we would have to draft the lien, notice of lien, and then we would have to record that. So that takes a process. And then additionally, when you talk about the judgment on the liens, that's another process. So it's not necessarily just a copy and paste on each lien. Each lien is a separate lien, and the process of recording each lien would be time consuming. So I think that's where the staff time comes in. When you speak about the letter of lien, perhaps creating some compliance, then similar to the letter that threatens the water shutoff, then you would get some compliance on that way, and then you wouldn't have to proceed to a lien. But as far as with actually drafting the lien, getting the lien recorded for each property, that is where we're looking at the time that's spent. It does take quite a bit of time.
And you would anticipate, I mean, it's what it says here in the memo, but it would be 4 hours for each individual lien that would need to be prepared.
I think that might be an estimate. It may take 4 hours. It's potentially depending on the complexity with each property. It could be more, might be less.
What kind of
but-
complexity do you foresee with a water lien?
Well, we have to, I mean, for each property, even with the liens that we currently do for other issues, you have to actually draft the lien, the notice of the lien. We have to get, oftentimes we even have to get an affidavit to go along with the lien. So it's not really a cut and paste. It requires us to identify the property. It's just, it does take time for each property. It could be less than 4 hours. I think that's the law department's estimate on the average, but yeah.
Okay. Deputy Manager Stonebeck, and then Councilmember Nisma.
Thank you. I just want to point out that for each lien, you do have to search for the Cook County tax PIN number for that property, and you also have to type in the legal description of the property. And the legal description of a property can be cumbersome, and to make sure it's accurate, that's why I think it takes a lot of time just to type all that in, if you understand what the legal description is.
Yeah.
So many feet north of the certain subdivision, and so I think that's what can actually take the time.
Yes, but just as a point of information, the legal description is available at the Recorder of Deeds office. Is that not correct? On every deed is the...
Yes, it is available.
And so would the city not have access to those deeds?
Yes, you have access to it.
So then
You
can
have
we
to
just
type it.
kinda
I'm not sure you can cut and paste directly in.
I can
fit
take
the
my iPhone
format
and
of-
hover it over something and it takes the text off of any page.
Okay.
But, okay. And I say that to say that I don't think that there is, if that's the most complex thing, is getting the legal description, and that's what it appears in the memo, I would just challenge that and say that I think we may have methods that are easier to get that legal description there by cutting down the time needed to process an individual lien, particularly when we're only, once we get to potential 80% of folks or more complying, it's not a lot of folks that we're talking about. Councilmember News.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just doing some quick math with the numbers we have in the memo here. And if we assume 20%, non-compliance after notice, and take the 254 numbers, so 20% of that is roughly 50 accounts that would still be delinquent, times $40, that's $2,000 in filing fees, not that much. And if we take the 4 hours of staff time assumption, that would mean about 200 hours of staff time spent on filing those liens. So just submitting that as a point of information.
And thank you for that. I think that's really key, because if we look at the cost of what we're currently doing, the shutoffs, the shutoff cost is over $4,000. And so we'd actually have a savings of just a few $1,000s, using your math, as far as cost to the city by performing liens, and we would eventually recoup that $2,000 once folks sold their property.
That doesn't count, that
The
doesn't
staff
take into
time.
account staff time.
I know that you're going to go there, but the other thing is labor hours here. We're talking about 100 hours of staff time with this, and I truly believe in our staff that if the hardest thing is getting the property description, I think we can find a way to make that process simpler, because it is provided on the deed. And I went through this memo thoroughly here, and that's The other thing is just getting the address, the PIN. I can find the PIN of any address in the city of Evanston in about 30 seconds. Give me an address and I can look it up on the About My Place and have the PIN. The legal description is provided by the county's office. We have folks here who know how much the person owes in their water fee. I think we can figure this out and create a system that can allow us to crank out the liens a bit faster than 4 hours. Maybe the first lien that we do will take 4 hours, but I think after you do the first few liens, you'll be able to crank them out pretty quick. And with that, let's say we just cut that in half, and instead of 4 hours, we brought it down to 2 hours. With that, we're already matching the amount of time that it takes for us. It's 100 hours of staff time to shut someone's water off. It's $4,000 that we have to spend on that. In this scenario, if we were to get it down half time, which I think is perfectly possible, it would be 100 hours of staff time and half the expense, and we wouldn't shut off anyone's water.
I'm doing some math here based on the analysis of the current shut-off list. That was 81 accounts with a total cost of $4,700 some dollars. That works out to $58 per account. And so that's the number we're trying to beat with a lean approach, LIEN, lean approach.
Thank you.
So of that $58, we got $40 for the lien, the filing fee of the lien itself, which leaves $18 to pay for staff time. And I don't disagree that we could probably get that down to significantly less than 4 hours, but I'm not sure what staff time in the law department is worth, but $18 of staff time is probably going to go by pretty quickly. So I think the lien concept was a really good idea, worth considering. I think in this case, by my math, by my analysis, I think sticking with our current approach does make sense.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, some of my questions from the last time we discussed this was to look at other cities that have done liens and how effective it's been, particularly if it was a city that went from shut off to liens. I'd love to see that in a future packet. Also asked for a list of the water shutoffs from the last time we did it and how long they were shut off.
And I have that
Is that-
information.
that's-
It's not in the memo.
It's not in the memo, right?
But I
Yeah,
have
okay.
that.
So I would like to see that. And then I was curious the last time, you remember, I asked what some of the top amounts that people owe were, like even like a top 5, top 10 would help, specifically because we only allow currently, what is it? You can go on a repayment plan, but we only do that 2 years out.
Correct.
So I
It
just
used to
wanted
be 6 months.
I wanted to know what that top dollar amount, so I can do some quick math and see who would be eligible for that program.
The top dollar amount was $17,000
Okay. Yep.
from a commercial account.
And what about residential? Do you have that on hand?
I don't have the
Okay.
the residential.
Do you know what the top 5, top 10 were, though, total? You could just rattle them off if you have it available. If not, we can get that offline.
I
Yeah.
would love for this to come back because there are some really key questions. And
I just want to make sure I get all my
Yeah,
questions
on this
in.
list, I don't have them individually broke down. They're broken
But
down
we can
in
get that
groups.
at the next committee meeting, but certainly get all of your questions out so we can have those answered.
I think that was the last one, though. So those are the things that I'd like to see at the next time we discuss this.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
I guess I'll send this off with a reminder that's in the packet that after the notices that are shut off, I think the number to focus on is 80% of those folks pay, right? So we're now talking about 20% of our residents. So if we're focusing on the 20% of the residents, which is I would like to think a manageable number for Mr. King and the staff, that we realize for many of them, if there's anyone that would qualify for our general assistance as well as the other programs that are supported, that a lot of the issue takes care of itself. So I'm not going to say that this is a perfect system, but I will confidently say out of all the problems that I hear, like water shutoff is probably at the bottom of the list. So I appreciate the attention to this because it's, critical, but we do have the necessary systems in place in event that we have to deal with the 20%. And so since I don't get a lot of phone calls, I'll also agree that what we're doing is working. And if there's someone else who hears this and disagrees, then please contact me and I'll direct you to our general assistant staff. Thank you, Mr. King, for your report and follow up on this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that until you're the person that's going without the water for any length of time, it's certainly a dire situation then. And I particularly want to look at the number of that we know that roughly 14% of our residents in this city are, low income and struggling. That's a known number. And we only have roughly 17, maybe that number's grown in the last week, 17 folks that are signed up for some of the reduced rates that are provided by the water department. So when I see that, I do see that there is a big disconnect between the goals that we want to achieve. If there were 1,000 people signed up or 2,000 people, we'd be really heading in the right direction. But when only 17 people are signed up for that program, that means that almost everyone has fallen through the cracks. Councilmember Burns.
As a quick summary, Darryl, what outreach efforts do we do now to get to 17?
So when a account goes on the past due list, we go out and we perform postings, just reminding accounts that they're past due. So we post a past due, and we also post information about our LIWAP program, as well as the affordable rate program. That information is on the city bills. We put it on there. We've sent out tweets and different things through the social media that we have. We've listed it in the Evanston News that goes out, every Thursday. We put it there. We have a Water Smart program where you can, measure how much water you're using. We're able to send out emails about these programs. We've done that. Whenever we take a call from a community member, we get that information out that way as well. And we've shared these programs with other departments that have public-facing opportunities so they can, get the information out in that way.
Thank you. All right.
But specifically when someone, specifically when someone is in trouble, are we sending something directly to their address, to their phone, calling them? Are we doing any direct outreach when someone's in trouble?
When we're aware that someone's in need, absolutely. We refer them either to Health and Human Services Department for emergency assistance. If it's imminent or if there's some time, we can see if they qualify for the LIHEAP program so that they can get set up with the affordable rates, as well as the LIWAP program.
All right, thank you.
The big thing is we have to be aware of it.
Thank you. All right. Have we, just one last question on that item. Have we sent that letter to the 200 some odd folks that are on this list already?
What letter are you referring to?
The information that you just referred to with Councilmember Burns, have we?
So with folks that are past due, we send out information first through the water bill. We send out past due notices. So technically before an account is shut off, we reach out to them like 5 times through water bills, through individual past due notices, through a shut-off notice historically, which would be about 2 or 3 weeks before a shut-off event. And then the properties that are rental properties that we're aware of, we physically post those buildings a week before. So there are like 5 notifications that go out to inform a property owner or account holder of the status of an account.
Just if I can, one more time, just specifically, have the folks that are on the list now, have they received information about the LIWAP and all of the
Yes.
programs? Yes, okay, thank you. All right, may I have a motion for APW 2?
I'd like to move item APW 2 for discussion.
Okay, approval of lead service line replacement workforce development program.
I will second that.
Moved by Councilmember Braithwaite, seconded by Councilmember Nusma. Are there any questions? Or is there staff who wants to open up the discussion? Interim Manager Stonebeck.
Thank you. We were requested, staff was requested to come up with a plan where we might take advantage of the need to replace the lead service lines and how we could employ more Evanston residents to help assist at that program. So staff came back with this proposed plan. As we hire full-time permanent employees, we cannot have a local residence requirement, at least not at this time. But we do have that for our apprentice program. So staff is suggesting that we hire apprentices, which are then Evanston residents, and we train them, give them employment, train them for a year to 2 years, and then start filling some permanent positions in the city that would address the lead service line replacement, as well as repairing the street after the excavation to replace the lead service line. So overall, if this program was approved, we'd be looking to hire 7 new city employees. The salary of those employees would have to come from the water fund, which would require a 9% water rate increase. And staff would recommend that take place over 2 years. We would hire 6 apprentices. If this program is approved, as soon as possible, get them employed and start training them on the specific work with replacing lead service lines and doing street pavement patching, and then wait at least a year to start filling these positions so that those employees have already gained the knowledge and expertise on how to do that, and will generally be found to be the most qualified candidates to hire as a full-time permanent position. So that's the one part of it. The other part of it is that we would need to purchase equipment to be able to have equipment for those 2 new crews to use, and that's a cost of approximately $930,000. And we would recommend that money come from the ARPA funds. Specifically, in the ARPA funds, City Council directed $6 million towards infrastructure. $3 million of that has already been spent to replace water main last year. There's still $3 million left. We would propose to take approximately $1 million of that to purchase these pieces of equipment that we need. The other $2 million is a program that I think we'll be coming back to shortly. With the new state law, you can't repair a lead service line, you have to replace it. And so we would use that $2 million to hire plumbers to replace the private side of the lead service line that has to be replaced. And then we would use, hopefully, our new employees to replace the public side of those broken services. And so that's our proposed plan. If the committee finds that to be acceptable, staff would come back with the appropriate paperwork to officially document that at the next meeting, and then get committee and council approval to move forward, and then we would do so.
Councilmember Burns.
I just wanted to thank staff for working on this. This was based on a referral I made back in August to create a lead pipe replacement workforce program. What I was trying to solve for is to see if we can find a way to hire Evanston residents to do a portion of the lead line replacement work. This is work that we'll have in the city of Evanston for the next 30 years. And although we've had some success working with contractors to hire locally, which is typically what we would do, we can't guarantee it. And so for this type of opportunity, it was really important that we set aside some work specifically for Evanston residents. And it looks like we've been able to do that. It's one thing for for this legislative body to kind of dream big and have these ideas, but it was really staff that came together to figure out how to work it out. So I'm really proud of what this looks like. And what my understanding is, as Mr. Stoneback said, is that this is the set aside is the lead. What I noticed early on in my term is I would be riding my bike through the neighborhood and I saw city workers out replacing lead lines, and I stopped on many occasions and had really good discussions with city staff. So I knew we could do some of the work, and so basically I worked with Darryl and Dave to think about what we could set aside for Evanston residents. What could our city employees train Evanston residents to do in regards to lead pipe replacement? And I was told that while we don't have city staff right now that can replace the portion, that are trained to replace the portion between the service valve, the buffalo box, and the water meter, that they are trained to do what was earlier referred to as the public side between the service valve and the water main. And so we're talking about, annually, I think I saw $700,000 that will go to Evanston residents, hopefully. And I think if we're strategic about this, we really can identify and encourage people to apply who are coming from households that might be unstable due to economic hardship, right? And really encourage them to apply for this opportunity. Just imagine what we can do to stabilize our community if we're much more specific about hiring locally with these opportunities. If you look at the memo, these are $100,000 a year job. This is excellent work. So again, thank you to staff, and look forward to this coming back. I think we still need to wait for the code changes, but this is good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Burns, Councilmember Nusma, then Councilmember Berthwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify the scope of work for the apprentices, they would be working on the city side of the valve box, right? They wouldn't be working on the customer side.
That is correct. We get approximately 68 services that break a year. In the past, it was a lot easier just to repair them, and now we're not allowed to repair them. So that would be 68 replacements that have to be performed.
And those are service breaks on the city side that the city is responsible.
It doesn't matter if it's on the city side or on the private side, and a lot of our breaks occur in that service valve that we're talking about that's in the parkway, because those are underutilized, and then when you go to actually use them, they break. And in the past, we were able to just go down, excavate right there in the parkway, put a new valve in, use 2 short sections of copper and hook up to the old pipe. Now we're not allowed to do that. We have to replace the lead pipe from the meter all the way to the water main. You have to be a licensed plumber to do the work inside the home and out to the parkway, but you can be a city employee to do the work from the parkway out to the street.
But does the customer bear any portion of that cost?
It is staff's proposal, and I believe this has been approved, that we decide that getting the lead out is a public benefit, and therefore the city would pay that entire cost. That's why we're allocating $2 million of the remaining ARPA funds to be able to pay plumbers. So our thought is this line breaks, we want to contact all the plumbers in Evanston, as well as a few other that might be pre-qualified, and say, this property needs its lead service line replaced. Please provide us a quote within 14 days to replace the lead service line at this home, because each property has a different, unique situation. So the plumbers that have the availability and the time will provide the city quotes to do that. The city will look at that and then award it to the company that provides the best quote. That's for the private side, what I refer to from the home to the service valve.
Right.
The city will replace the other portion.
Right, and that's what our apprentices would be
That's
working on
what
the
this
city
program is
side, but
about.
they would be working closely with plumbers on a regular basis, and maybe an apprentice goes through our program and then gets hired by a plumber.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, which is a positive outcome.
So our apprentice program has been very successful. We have 11 apprentices working at the water plant in either distribution sewer or at the water plant, and that's like 24% of the water department staff. If you take away the management and get down to the union positions, that's 36. So we're up to about 30% of our union positions are apprentices. We also have 2 apprentices working in other departments within the city, actually for Public Works, but in other divisions. And we have 3 apprentices that are working in other municipalities in the water plants as well. So since 2009, we've been very successful in getting the apprentices hired, training them, and giving them good jobs.
So no reason to expect that that would change at all. Moving forward, we would be able to find sufficient apprentices within the city of Evanston to fill these roles.
That will be and we're counting on the city council to help us with that, and is to get qualified residents to apply to the program. If they're willing to learn and can show up to work on time, we have the ability to train them and make them successful.
What do those qualifications look like, and where would we be recruiting from?
Right now, we recruit through the HR department on our normal website, but we have been making the council members aware when we have these apprentice positions open, and we ask them to let their constituents know about it and apply to the position if they're so inclined.
Yeah, and we do have a workforce development coordinator on staff, so he would be involved in that.
Yes, he definitely would help us with finding candidates. When I spoke to him about this, he did imply he knew several that he thought would be interested.
Got it. But in terms of the, immense task of replacing all the lead service lines in Evanston, that's going to take a lot of time and millions of dollars.
Yes, and we're hoping that the infrastructure bill rolls down from the federal government to the state. We anticipate that will take about 2 years, so we think that we have the funding to get us through for the first 2 years. We will be hiring contractors at some point to replace full lead service lines as well, because we would never be able to do that with our own staff with the amount that we have to do. In 34 years, we have to get everything out. So that'd be well beyond our scope. We're looking at the 60 to 100 services a year that we could do in-house.
That would be covered not by federal funds, but by the water rate increase.
But yes, so
is there any way if we get more from
20 years later, we're going to need to buy equipment again, and I'm not sure where that money will come from. But the water rate increase would cover the cost of the employees and the annual materials that we need to do the work.
Is that only until federal funding becomes available? Or we'll see. That's kind of an unknown.
If we're going to hire 7 new employees, that becomes a full-time expense that we would have to cover.
Okay, thanks.
The city, and we were proposing to pay for those 7 positions out of the water fund, even though 3 of them are in the streets division. They'll be focusing mostly on repairing the street where we've excavated for lead service line replacement.
So one way or another, we are going to be paying to replace the lead service lines.
Right. Either we're going to pay a plumber to do the work, or to go all the way out to the main, or we're going to have our own employees do it.
Using some of our ratepayer money and hopefully in the future some federal money, but
yes,
we're still going to be on the hook.
We don't believe that we'll ever get all the federal funding that we need to replace this. I don't believe that they actually understand the scope of the work and how much it costs. Fortunately, at a conference we were at last week, we were successful in removing the separation requirement between water services and sewer services. So that was a big deal for us. We're going to be able to excavate in one location to disconnect the existing water service and install the new water service instead of having to move 10 feet away from it. So that's a big cost savings that.
And so what does that rate increase look like if and I know the our water rate has actually stepped down because we're retiring some debt?
Our water rate has actually increased. We've been decreasing the sewer rate and increasing the water rate, and it's been revenue neutral to the homeowners.
That's what I was referring to.
And so we've had the same rate. Well, actually, in 2022 was our first rate increase, I think, in 7 years. So we went up 2% combined water and sewer rate. But this would be a 9%, and then the next time we're looking at a water rate increase, it would be offset by a sewer rate decrease. And then I think if we look at this actually out 30 years or so, we're looking at about a 2% rate increase every 4 years is what I think our
Combined?
Combined
Combined
water
water
sewer
and
rate
sewer.
increase is about 2% every 4 years, if I'm remembering right from our model that we look at.
Just to pay for this particular program?
2% every 4 years is just the cost of, it costs money, the cost of inflation.
Got it.
9% is for this, and then we need to keep going up.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Braithwaite.
I'll make it quick just because we have people here in time. I think, and I'll ask Daryl to understand the difference between this and what we're doing now and what we have in place. And I would ask, so we can definitely celebrate this because it is an expansion of what we're doing. But I think the important thing to pay attention is when you look at the annual salary of who these workers, what they would be paid. So it's $31,000. Do the math on that. You break it down by 12, it's 25. It's less than $1,200 every 2 weeks. And so I think because it's coming out of a revenue generating fund, if somebody's going to sacrifice that time, and it's a huge payoff when you look at the salaries that they're going to be awarded coming up training, that we may want to do something, Daryl or Dave, as they progress through this and they show commitment and skill, that we look at a model where they're making more money. If I was in that position, great sacrifice. Would I be able to afford to pay for my family and live in Evanston? Absolutely not. So half of their rent, half of their salary would be paying rent with no livable wages. And again, just think of your own family and if you're in this situation. So I don't want to take up any time now because we're not going to solve it. We have enough time to figure that out between now and implementation, but we need to be a little bit more thoughtful in terms of what they're paying for that sacrifice and commitment to get to that 100 and plus salary. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Braithwaite.
But just as a point of reference, the apprentices would be receiving pension and insurance benefits during their apprenticeship,
I think so.
confirming what was in the
Pension. Oh, they would, okay. Or getting credits toward.
Yes, and Chair Reed, members of the committee, so yes, they do receive health benefits during the apprenticeship, and I'm not sure about the IMRF. They do. They're on IMRF. Yep.
And we actually looked up what the average salary was for a laborer in the Chicagoland area, and we are close to paying that. So we pay $14 an hour for the first 6 months, $16 an hour for the next 6 months, and then $18 an hour for the last year if they stick around for the full 2-year program. And that cost is compatible to what an apprentice, a labor apprentice would make in the Chicagoland area. So if they went to work for a union contractor as a laborer, as an apprentice, and I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong, as a labor apprentice, they would make similar dollars as what we're proposing in our apprentice program.
I'd love to, we can take this offline just to get us moving, but thank you for that feedback.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And then our last thing is, it's not on the agenda, but just very quickly, an update on the Director or Manager Stoneback, an update on the sewer.
Right, and staff is struggling to come up with how to indicate that repairing a sewer service which provides service to only one property can be illustrated as a public benefit. And that's where we're at right now. I believe that you've been asked to help us identify what that public good would be, public benefit.
Yes, and so we plan to bring something back to this committee in the next few meetings to continue working on the sewer repair item. Councilmember Burns.
Just briefly, I did do some research on the insurance side, and what Francine said is obviously correct in that most sewer line replacement insurance programs cap what they'll cover at $10,000. And I called quite a few, give you a list, but I called at least 4 insurance companies, and none of them will cover it. I was able to talk to the contractor that worked on her project, And he said there, and I asked him, I said, have you ever worked on a job where the sewer line replacement, because of the depth of the line, was upwards of 30, 40,000? He said, yes. I said, was there ever a case where an insurance covered it? And he said, I think. And then he said, the insurance company, which I won't say that because everybody probably rushing to him. And I want to make sure it's true first. But so there might be one insurance company that does cover this, and it seemed like a pretty well-known and established insurance company. So I have a call into them. I'm waiting to hear back, but that'll help me at least decide on what I'm willing to support moving forward, not necessarily for Francine, but what type of financial assistance that I'd be willing to support moving forward. But I did do that research, and I'm still working on that. But and that's all.
Yeah, if I recall from, because I was on the call with you, if I recall, I think even that situation may have been a particular situation that allowed that homeowner to get that rate. I think it was, I don't know if that was like a universal.
Well, we don't know. I haven't talked to the insurance company,
yeah.
but I'll report back on what I find out.
Okay, so is there anything further, any further questions from the committee on that item? We're looking to come back with something to ensure that if any other resident gets saddled with, $40,000 in sewer repair debt, that the city is there to step in and assist them. And so that's the goal of that policy, and hopefully we can bring back something soon. Thank you. With that, this
We have Francine Allen on the line. Here she is.
no, the committee meeting is coming to an end now, but thank you, and certainly we've been in contact. But so with that, the committee meeting is drawing to an end, and council will start in